Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe.
What wrestlers will jump ship between WWE, New Japan, Impact, ROH, WOS Wrestling, all of the ones, AEW? In 2019, we're going to try and attempt to answer that question with rampant speculation and who's been rumoured and whatnot. This show is, of course, sponsored by Beer 52. Head over to beer52.com/WrestleTalk to get your free case of craft beer. UK viewers only. We'll be talking about this lovely porter in the break, and it's Fight Forever's final two shows of their debut tour tonight and tomorrow in Bristol and Liverpool. So click the link in the video description below to get your tickets. We were at last night's show, which we haven't been to yet. There's a bit of time travel involved here.
Yes, because it's 1:30 on a Friday, and the show doesn't start until 7. So
we're going to get started
we're getting started
on the festivities.
Tea and then some beer.
Tea and beer.
I haven't even had lunch yet.
That's a way to hurt your teeth.
I haven't had lunch yet, and I only had hummus and toast for breakfast this morning, so I am ready for a party, mate. With the Godfather, no less.
I've been unwell all morning, and I'm going to have a beer now. What can go wrong?
Hey,
what can go wrong?
Seems like a party right here.
But we are giving it what's the opposite of retrospective?
A perspective? No, it's not.
An in advance thumbs up.
Yeah.
That's how confident we are in the promotion.
Bloody exactly.
So there's been the last month, 2 months really, have seen loads of little talent not spats, but interpromotional drafty kind of reports and rumours take place, because weirdly everyone's contract seems to either expire on 31st of December or in January time.
Yes, it seems like everyone re-signed in 2016 to 3-year deals. So we're now just in a situation where everyone...
Your graphic's gone crazy.
Graphic has gone crazy. How did that happen? Sorry.
In 2016.
Fill for me while I fix
Okay,
this.
well, I was going to say, it's like AJ Styles, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, Shinsuke Nakamura. They all left New Japan in January 2016 and showed up in WWE in just like a few weeks after. And everyone looked at that and thought, let's continue to do business as normal and still get everyone to have their contracts expire at the same time.
Yeah.
So this is like, it's kind of like, well, in the UK, in sports, in football sports, they have soccer sports, if you're American, they have transfer deadline day.
Yes, but it's not like that in wrestling. And I would have thought that come 2019, with all the stories that we've had this year, I think there are going to be more stringent contracts in place with some companies. I think there'll be people trying to lock down talent more than just being like, hey, you work for us, but you can also go work for those guys over there as well if you want.
Maybe a few alliances between promotions. Of course, Impact and ROH, there's something going on there when Austin Aries showed up.
And New Japan have got a relationship with Rev Pro and things like
that.
And
ROH.
And ROH, exactly, yeah. I mean, they're doing a show together at Madison Square Garden. A show that's so big that WWE have moved NXT, or did they move it for that reason?
That is a very significant line in the sand there. It's like, really, WWE are bigger than everyone else combined with resources and exposure. They're the biggest company in the world.
And no one's close.
But
there is a distant number two.
Yeah. So everyone's got to band together, really, for the good of the business. But at the same time, there is a lot of Judea People's Front and the People's Front of Judea going on in wrestling.
Nice.
And rightly so, everyone's got their companies that they're precious over.
Exactly.
And they see the short-term egotistical gain over the larger.
It is a business at the end of the day. This is show business.
So, but for us, sitting on the sidelines, I love nothing more than backstage international global warfare.
Well, not only that for us really means in 2019, that's more silhouettes with question marks. Top stars? Oh, mate.
Unfortunately, everyone's a top star now.
Oh, yeah.
Major stars. That's what I want to see.
Is that the new one?
Huge is big, but major.
Oh.
Because that fits better on a thumbnail.
Oh, man. I mean, today I went with New Japan Champion.
Ooh.
For the Friday
People are going to
news.
misread that and get annoyed.
And think it's Kenny Omega when it is not. It is Kushida.
He is a New Japan champion. That's what I say.
Exactly.
Fortunately for you, they're IWGP champions. So that's an easier distinction. When this guy says WWE champion about Buddy Murphy, everyone gets angry.
Oh, mate, absolutely. So what we thought we would do is we would kind of compile together all of sort of the rumoured names that are joining certain companies or are rumoured to be joining other companies, and try and sort of condense them down as much as we can. We've got NXT, we've got New Japan, we've got
and WWE is
so one and the same, yeah. AEW, which will be rumoured to be starting. Cody has said we're getting a big announcement in January. We're seeing Cody tonight, so maybe we'll try and squeeze some information out of him.
Cody's seen us.
Oh yeah, much better.
That's
Yeah,
how it works.
I heard that
Now he knows who we are.
that Brandy Rhodes, when she was writing down the guest list of people, she was like, "Can you please make sure that Ollie Davis is on that guest list?"
Can you not toy with my emotions like that? I'm kind of nervous. I'm more nervous about being in the same room as her than I am anyone else. Really.
What about Conrad?
Conrad's my buddy. I like Conrad.
Oh yeah, you're email friends, aren't you?
We're email friends. Bruce can do one.
Yeah. We got AEW, so Cody has said there's going to be a big announcement in January next year. Ring of Honor, who are losing some of their biggest names, so they are on a drive at the moment to try and recapture or bring in some new names to try and rebolster their division. We've also got Impact, MLW, WOS, and some free agents. So let's go through some of these names then. So we'll start with NXT. We'll start with NXT, and some of the names that have been rumoured for NXT/WWE this year have included, from New Japan, Tetsuya Naito,
who has said no.
Yes, he turned down a contract, reportedly turned down a contract for WWE. Kenny Omega has sort of been on the sidelines all year long of whether or not he's going to be joining WWE, or if he's going to head over to AEW, or if he's going to stick with New Japan. He is their current IWGP Heavyweight Champion. I would have thought, come Wrestle Kingdom, that'll be the telling sign. If he loses the title to Tanahashi, that'll be the sort of telling sign of where he stands with that company.
That'll be a huge blow, because I think the Omega. This is nothing new. Meltzer has speculated on this This is a very good story to tell. Tanahashi beats Omega, which I really think he should do, because Tanahashi's had this incredible 2018.
Really good comeback story.
But then Omega wins it back from him at the Madison Square Garden show in April.
Ooh.
So I wouldn't say that him losing at Wrestle Kingdom.
Yes, but currently,
if you have him disappear and go into soul searching.
I was going to say, currently, he's not advertised for that Madison Square Garden show.
Okay. But his contract expires with New Japan on the 31st of January.
Yes.
Because that rules him out of the Royal Rumble.
Yes.
But we will still make videos on all the rumours.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, I was going through the predictions list. The people were giving their predictions for WWE and the greater wrestling world for 2018. A large number of them were all about Kenny Omega in the Royal Rumble. That was their big thing. Or Kenny Omega signs with NXT and things like that. So I'd imagine for the predictions 2019, we're going to get a lot of similar predictions.
It's going to happen every year he's not in WWE. And I think that's going to be a few years, because he's a guy who wants to wrestle a certain style. He's an artist in the ring, and he can't do that in WWE. So just do a Nakamura. When your body can't do it anymore, phone it in to WWE.
Absolutely. So also the names, this came from the Wrestling Observer this week. So this is a list of names that WWE are currently interested in or reportedly have already signed, and they're going to be starting in NXT in January. That includes Rachel Ellering, who's currently a free agent, but she's done some work with NXT before. Not Tessa Blanchard, who you confused her for.
I don't know why I did that. I think second
generation. That's what you did.
I mean, she should be a great act with AOP.
Yeah.
Just get rid of Drake Maverick now. He's pissed his pants on that one.
Yeah, she would struggle to do the pissing thing on TV.
Women can wet themselves.
Well, I'm talking more about pissing on robes.
I hear it. Yeah. It'd be more of a squat thing.
Yeah.
Or a shiwi.
Absolutely a shiwi, yeah. Karen Q, who's currently with Ring of Honor. Jonah Rock, who is a big Australian guy.
I don't know Jonah Rock.
I'm not familiar with him either, but I can tell you he is big and Australian.
I've heard so Buddy Murphy. Or a tall Buddy Murphy.
Think more like Otis Dozovich big.
So more like a big block.
Yeah.
That Jonah Rock's an interesting one. I've never heard of him, and it's apparently indicative of WWE sort of... They realise they've got pretty much all the big names on the indie scene they can get now. So the next step is to get the people who nobody really knows about yet beyond a local level.
Yeah.
So a Jonah Rock must be a big deal down in Australia, but I've never heard of him.
And it speaks to that rumor that they're going to be the Triple H's global localization, NXT Australia, because Australia's got a really big emerging pro wrestling scene at the moment. That, also with NXT Germany, NXT Japan, which we'll come on to shortly. Jonah Rock, Trevor Lee, who has just left Impact, he's going to be starting in January in NXT, reportedly.
He is one of the unsung heroes of this year. I get message after message that Trevor Lee is just killing it on these indie shows. He had the 60-minute match with ACH recently. I remember back in July he had a match that everyone was going, this is a legit 5 stars. And it was in front of 20 people.
Yeah.
So I have tremendous respect for Lee.
And
he's one of those guys who just goes in there and loves to wrestle great matches.
And speaking of, ACH is also on that list. Reportedly, he's going to start in NXT in January. And then finally, Walter is on that list. Reportedly is signed with NXT UK because he did not want to work. Well, he didn't want to move to America, essentially. So he can stay in Germany, just come over to the UK, which he does a lot anyway, do NXT UK tapings and their takeover shows, if there's going to be a plural, and then he can just go back to Germany. Or Austria.
Because if Walter doesn't want to go to America, you can't make the guy.
No, you cannot. He'll just chop you out of a meeting room.
I love how... I mean, is it physically possible for a plane to hold him up that long?
I don't know. I think he's
I think that's why he only sticks in the Europe area.
I think really he's holding up the plane. And then the final name to go over on that list, which is one that was in the Observer today, and apparently this has been weeks and weeks in development, but he is now being talked about a lot. Because the story is that WWE are interested in a lot of top New Japan names that they want to sign, presumably because they want to launch NXT Japan, and bringing in a lot of these names will be a way to start that promotion. And the way that Meltzer phrases it is that they are unlikely to get the majority of the names they want. But one guy that they are talking about a lot, and very much could be on the cards, is the current IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion Kushida of Time Splitter fame. So apparently he is on the list for names that could join NXT in the new year.
He's an excellent man.
He's so good.
He's so good.
I what's the word I'm after? Shared. I shared a lift with him at Wrestling MediaCon, and I got too nervous to say anything. And my wife could tell that I was like, because he got out the floor before us. And I turned around and I was like, that was Kushida. She was like, I could tell it was someone famous because you sort of clammed up a little bit. Oh my God, I'm in the lift with Kushida.
Because you had a visible erection.
Oh yeah, and you got to hide that thing, haven't you?
Yeah.
Pretend that your wife gave it to you.
I love Kushida. And I also think, as much as I love him in New Japan, I feel like he's done everything. I feel like he's done everything when he goes over to Ring of Honor. He's been the ROH TV champion this year too. And Kushida has been in the junior heavyweight division for a couple of years now. He's had all the great matches with that repertoire of guys in there. That's one of the names where I'm not like, oh, they stole him. I'm just like, actually, I think that's a good move for you, Kushida.
I just hope that if Kushida does go to NXT, he can keep his Back to the Future gimmick, and they won't be like, we're a bit worried about Universal getting onto us with copyrights. Because it is one of the really funner parts of his gimmick. Is like, looking at the watch, lifting up the glasses. I love it.
I would argue the only part of his gimmick. He's not a guy who exudes charisma. Fantastic wrestler.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Yeah. I think that's fair enough. He eats cereal very, very calmly, though. I can tell you that much. Anyway, so
stories from the Holiday Inn buffet.
These are the backstage scoops that you can expect from the WrestleRamble.
Yeah, we awkwardly hang out near wrestlers. Don't talk to them much.
I just remember going down for breakfast one morning and you essentially text me saying, I'm having breakfast, and Dave Meltzer is on the table next to me. He's wearing a funky jacket. And I was like, I wonder if I'll spot that jacket when I walk in. Oh, I think I spotted it as soon as I walked out the lift. Good Lord.
That jacket caused traffic disruptions 3 miles away.
You couldn't miss it.
It's very, very loud.
So, on to New Japan, and obviously the 4 names that are interesting for New Japan, the people that have been, one name's very much been reported to be on the radar. The other ones, we definitely know their contracts are expiring next year, which are AJ Styles and Galanderson, because they joined WWE in 2016. Now, according to PW Insider and The Observer, AJ Styles' contract is there until April It's been misreported as January. Apparently it's up in April, and there's no word on whether he's re-signed or not. But it's not January, it's April. And the Good Brothers are signed up until the summer of next year.
That makes sense, because even though AJ obviously signed in mid-January 2016 to a 3-year deal, which would run out mid-January next year, you'd think they'd want to get him, I think, like, part of the way through that. They're like, well, let's lock you down for a full WrestleMania program.
Yeah, absolutely. At least, yeah.
Let's not do a Brock Lesnar and put ourselves in a bad negotiating position.
So those two are with WWE at least until Q2 next year, if we're talking business terms. And the other name, and we don't really know much details on his contract negotiations, but it is Shinsuke Nakamura. And there was a story earlier this year that New Japan were very interested in bringing Nakamura back into their fold.
But is Nakamura interested?
Yeah.
Does he want to go back and have that kind of like rougher style, or can he go back and work a safer style and off his name, and he can be back in his home country? It's been 3 years. Who knows?
Will there be an expectation for him to go back to doing that rougher style? So I suppose the big one, the big company that's on this list, I suppose the most interesting one from a fan perspective, is All Elite Wrestling. Now, we don't really know many details about this until Cody and the Young Bucks, I'd imagine, make their announcement next year. But I would have thought, and this is a list that you and I have compiled together, that the names that you can almost assume will be a part of that roster would be Kenny Omega, Cody, Young Bucks, and Hangman Page. Probably Marty Scurll as well, depending on where or what deals he's currently got going on at the moment.
Well, it sounds like his contract isn't in sync with everyone else's, whereas all those guys, their contracts have either already expired, like Cody, he's not with Ring of Honor anymore, and Kenny's is January, end of January. The Young Bucks are December 31st.
Yes.
By all accounts. Marty Scurll seems to be much later, because no one's really talking about him. It's that entire elite group.
Yes.
And it's called All Elite Wrestling. If it's going to go ahead, I'm pretty certain they'll all do it.
Yeah.
Omega's the only question mark there, because he is the New Japan champion, but maybe New Japan want to create that relationship. Ring of Honor really is the loser here. No matter which way this goes, ROH have already lost a lot of their main draws.
Yeah, it's a real shame for them.
And this was their big year of Sinclair getting behind them. They saw how much money All In made. They saw how much money WWE got for their TV contracts, and they've not acted fast enough. There was a point where they could have invested a lot of money, got these guys secured, and they haven't. And I think that's gonna hurt them a lot for 2018 and 2019. And it's going to take at least 2 years to rebuild.
Yeah, it's a real shame for Ring of Honor. Although I suppose we could say we don't know whether Sinclair did try to make offers to them.
Well, they weren't big enough.
Well, apparently they weren't big enough, because they have said no. So yeah, Cody is working the December 14th show, doing Final Battle, and Cody and the Young Bucks are scheduled for the TV tapings the night after as well. But those will be their final dates with Ring of Honor. And another name on there is Chris Jericho.
He's been rumoured along with Jim Ross.
Yes, because apparently as either investors in this business, but you'd imagine Chris Jericho, he's been doing a lot with the Bucks and the Elite and being the Elite and things like that. So you'd imagine he'd be probably looking to do some stuff with them for All Elite Wrestling and sort of get them at the ground level. And as reported by WrestleTalk.com, at least 2 WWE stars under contract who have agreed in principle to join the company.
Very exciting.
Very, very exciting. Do you want to talk about Ring of Honor then?
Yeah, so Ring of Honor, like I said, they're the big losers here. They've managed to re-sign Silas Young, who over the last few weeks was rumoured to be going to WWE. And as much as I love Silas Young, he's not a headliner. He's 39 years old. He's not really going to become a headliner. He's not a draw, but I do like seeing him on TV.
I think that's because he said in an interview that, like, he, essentially confirmed those rumours and said, like, yeah, I was talking with WWE, but I looked at their roster and I thought, well, I don't really stand a cat and hell's chance of getting onto that TV show. They've got a stacked roster at the moment, so I think I'm better off staying in Ring of Honor.
Especially because ROH have also signed PCO.
Yeah.
And that they cut. I do want to see a PCO Young match, but I think they might kind of cancel each other out. Or maybe they're like the good, bad versions of those old guy, just tough as nails characters.
But again, PCO is someone who is like, he's at the tail end of his career. He's in his mid-50s. He hasn't got he's had an incredible 2018 and really developed this amazing cult following behind him due to the matches that he had, like at Joey Janela's Spring Break with Walter and things like that. But you can't build a company around PCO. It's the same with, so it was in the news this week, Ken Shamrock has returned to professional wrestling. He's a guy apparently in incredible shape for his mid-50s. So you think, like, Ring of Honor, if you wanted to bring in a name to try and capture some of the lapsed wrestling fans who might remember the name Ken Shamrock, it's not really a guy you can build a company around. And apparently he's asking for a lot of money for dates. But they've also re-signed Jay Lethal, their champion, so that's good.
Which, Jay Lethal is a main eventer. He's a brilliant wrestler, great heel. But he's done everything as well. He's now's the time for Jay Lethal to move on from Ring of Honor. He must have been ROH champion 3 times now, which is a lot for an ROH champion. He's an all-time legend in that promotion, but I think he's done everything.
And speaking of all-time legends of that promotion as well, we don't know the contract details for Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian of SoCal Uncensored. Apparently they might be on the outs with Ring of Honor as well. They also re-signed Flip Gordon.
Cool.
He's about the only member of Being the Elite that has re-signed with ROH. Impact, Chris Jericho. So you know more about this than I do.
It's just Jericho and Don Callis have been teasing working together for loads.
A long time, yeah.
And I think Jericho's just holding off until they've got that January pay-per-view,
Homecoming,
the day after Wrestle Kingdom. So
is it really the day after Wrestle Kingdom? Crikey.
Yeah, so whether he does that and then, I'm pretty sure it's a Saturday. It's either a Saturday or it must be a Sunday. Yeah, so then he can do that, New Year's Dash, and then, or maybe he doesn't do New Year's Dash. Maybe that's Jericho's New Japan year-long run over. But I think Jericho's going to do something with Impact. Other than that, I don't know.
January 6th, it's 2 days after.
Impact have been very good, very solid this year, but they're not getting anyone big. Like they've got their roster down, and I think they'll just concentrate on that.
Yeah.
Which is, that's great. And you just add Jericho to what you've already got. That's a good strategy. Just invest in that big name. Because you've got Sami Callihan, you've got LAX, you've got Tessa Blanchard, not Rachel Allering. And those are big enough people to build your company around. We've got free agents as well, though. And one of those is Austin Aries.
Yes, speaking of Impact.
Who is, I think it's more of a work than a legit thing. Like, there's probably a working agreement that he will go back to pay off that weird Bound for Glory finish where he walked out on the promotion.
Flipping everyone off, yeah.
Yeah. So I think Aries going back to Impact, but largely I don't see many changes there.
No,
I don't think they've got the resources.
No, I think for Impact as well, they're probably waiting until they can get a new TV deal, and then maybe wait until you've got, you do your big sort of debut of someone like a Jericho or the return of Austin Aries, and wait till the debut episode on your new channel. They're in, they've been talking with WGN America that hosted All In 0 Hour, and Sci-Fi, who used to do SmackDown and ECW.
Sci-Fi would be a great move for them. I really hope that happens.
Because Impact at the moment, whether on Pop, they weren't getting the best ratings as it was, because it's not a particularly well-known channel. It's available in loads of homes, and people just don't know it's there, because it used to be a TV listings channel, and all it shows now is just The Young and the Restless, and repeats of That 70s Show, and things like that, or House. And so a move to the Sci-Fi Network would really help them. The other downside to Pop is that they've now been moved to 10 p.m., to 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. because they essentially, as a company, they were being outdrawn by The Young and the Restless and That 70s Show and House and replays of old movies. So I don't think Pop are really that invested in them anymore, which for Pop, they're not paying for it. It's a revenue share deal. So I think that Impact will probably wait until they move to a new channel before they do anything big.
And the only other real person of note in the free agents, apologies if we've missed anyone obvious,
please let us know in the comments,
is Kota Ibushi, who is a New Japan wrestler. He's got a featured match at Wrestle Kingdom, like he did this year with Cody. But he's not signed with them. He does what he wants.
Yeah, and you got to figure him for All Elite Wrestling.
Yes,
especially with that Young Bucks and that Elite connection, you got to figure him for that.
Golden Lovers.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to figure him for that.
Yeah. Of course, this show is sponsored by beer. The show's sponsored by beer. How amazing is that? Beer 52. Go over to beer52.com/WrestleTalk for your free case of craft beer. UK viewers only. I am trying the Amore, and it's a porter.
Yeah, and this is what I love about this sponsor. this time last year, you and I were going to wrestling shows, and you would say, like, oh, I'd really like to try a beer, but I don't know which beers to get. Like,
we went to that fancy pub with all the different beers. There were
exactly.
like 100 on tap.
Exactly, and you essentially asked me to go through them one by one in the menu and be like,
curious.
and sort of tell you things about them. But now, here we are, 1 year later, and you picked this up and was like, oh, it's a porter. And you know things about these because of our amazing sponsor.
They don't make me that bloated. Yeah. That's what I look for in anything I consume.
Yes.
Does it make me bloated?
So this is Amor from More Beer. The tasting notes: a massively decadent porter at a sessionable strength. Big nut and chocolate notes push for your nasal attention. The malt is the main star of this beer. The complex layers provide notes of chocolate and nuts with a touch of coffee hiding in the back. A beer to savor as the nights draw in. If you're wondering to yourself, what the heckins is a crap gimmick? Well, that's a segment we do here each and every Saturday on the WrestleRamble, where you, the SWAF Nation, submit to us your crap gimmicks, which we will then review and possibly sign to Crap Gimmick Wrestling. We are the bookers of that promotion. What's a crap gimmick? Well, that's up to your interpretation, but we like to think of it as the 90s. You are a wrestler and or a blank, and then you can go more abstract with it. We've got a massive backlog. If you want to email them in, it's luke@wrestletalk.com. That's luke@wrestletalk.com. One more time. Luke@WrestleTalk.com.
What's wrong with your computer
I think it's the
today?
HDMI cable.
Don't blame it on this stupidly expensive HDMI cable I bought.
Well, I do think it is that. Give me 1 second.
Oh, that's not the expensive one.
That's not the expensive one. So this comes from July 28th, sent to us by Chris Brinkman.
Another show would have done that as a retake.
Not us.
Not us.
Not us. We are strapped for time. I'm a big fan of WrestleTalk and love the Crap Gimmick Federations, Crap Gimmick Wrestling, and always wanted to submit an idea but couldn't think of one I thought was good enough. On one of your videos you mentioned Dungeons and Dragons, so I thought maybe one of my fun characters that I played in D&D could be used as a crap gimmick. So here is my pitch. His name is Jerry Soto and he's from New Jersey. Very short, around 5'2", not very built at all. He spent his childhood watching old karate movies when he wasn't watching wrestling, and he thinks he is a self-taught ninja. He talks in the third person and refers to himself as Soto-san, speaking in broken English and forced Japanese accent. That sounds like treacherous ground here in 2018. He also mounts
I think that's okay. The joke's on the ignorant person, not on the country.
Depends on if he's a babyface.
We'll see. We'll see.
He also... where is he? He also mouths a few words before he speaks in the voice like they do in those old karate movies. Soto-san believes he is Japanese. However, he was born a black man on the Jersey Shore. When he gets angry, he reverts to a very hard Jersey accent. Soto-san does not acknowledge the fact that he sounds different. He believes he is a ninja from unknown parts in Japan. He is shown throughout the show trying to hide and sneak up on who he is wrestling that night, trying to get the advantage on them, but he always gives himself away, or he hides in plain sight, blending into his environment. But Jerry doesn't change his attire to match the backgrounds he's trying to hide in front of. He always wears a black ninja costume with a mask that covers everything but his eyes, with a red bandana tied around the top. He has 2 self-made nunchucks strapped to his side. He is a member of a self-trained ninja, and his moves are not what they should be. When he attempts to actually perform karate, foes block all of his attempts quite easily, but he always seems to land a lucky blow. Soto-san has mastered one important ninja skill, the Jersey Snore, which is his finishing move. After one of his lucky kicks connects, Soto-san slides out of the ring and under the ring, out of sight. Crikey. And when his opponent comes to, he sees Soto-san has vanished and starts to look for him, and as he turns the ring, Soto-san slides under the rope behind them and quickly pinches a spot on his opponent's neck as they crumple to the ground unconscious instantly. Soto-san turns them over for the 1-2-3. He stands over his opponents and bows gracefully to the crowd, then leaps the barricade and disappears, leaving through the audience. Sorry, some of that was very difficult to read.
You made it more complicated by trying to read it at the fastest pace ever.
Well, it's because we're rushed for time, and and now also because the sentences were like 3 times as long as most normal sentences.
I do like it. I think the visual gag and the audio gag as well, of someone quite clearly speaking with a New Jersey accent, believing they're a Japanese ninja. Because that's like, you do get a lot of people. I used to do Tai Chi and karate as a kid.
As everyone did in the 90s.
Yeah, everyone did it. There was a scheme. I'm pretty sure there was a scheme where I had to do something physical.
Yeah.
And we all just decided to do karate.
Mine was judo. That's what they did at my school.
But anyway, I was the naughty one who just screwed around at the back. But there were people who took it very seriously, and they weren't that good at it. So I see this sort of... So I can see the sort of character this is. Although ninjas, in my understanding, are a lot more stealth-like. They'll poison you and they'll do things like that. They're the espionage masters of feudal Japan. So I think it's a classic misunderstanding, partly, of what a ninja is.
Yes, you've sort of confused two elements here. Although I do kind of warm to it because he's got homemade nunchucks, and my character in Dungeons and Dragons has the exact same weapon. So it does sort of warm my heart a little bit.
I do like it.
Yes. And then we've also got from Stanislaw from July 29th, The Cult of Holics. The COH, which is an abbreviation of The Cult of Holics, if you hadn't noticed, is a comedy jobber tag team consisting of King Russ, Jake the Jobber, Sam Diver, and Saddam Pachiti. They all come out of a loop of It's John O'Clock, and they're all dressed up in ugly black t-shirts with visible sweat stains. However, every time they walk out, they get no reaction whatsoever because the crap gimmick wrestling audience is more tired of them than people are of seeing Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, or like Almas before his star-making match with AJ. Their finishes are the Visit at the Zoo, a buckle bomb executed by one of the wrestlers, preferably Jake the Jobber, and the Wankety Wank, the Joey Ryan penis flip. Although they are pretty capable wrestlers, they either often botch moves or hit each other, thus costing them the match. Also, due to their ability to piss off their bosses at crap gimmick wrestling, they are squashed 66.6% of the time. Outside of the ring, they can usually be seen flipping off other wrestlers and cracking Jerry Lawler-style sex-orientated jokes that no one, except for themselves, laughs at. The COH are also there if you need to hype up a pay-per-view for their go-home shows. They always make predictions on who's going to beat who at the pay-per-view, and then after the show, the loser must be humbled / punished. Also, don't bother putting them in storylines. They're not worth it. They're just signed so they can be punished.
I'm a fan of this. I like this a lot. I think it has to be really clear that no one likes them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling to work out who it's a parody of, though.
It's just an original idea.
Okay.
But from what I got, it's the big important part is nobody cares about them. So out of the two, I did definitely the Cult of Holics.
Cult of Holics it is.
We didn't really touch each other properly there. I shook hands with the table.
Should I just do a bit more?
No, don't touch it.
And if you want to submit a question to the mailbag, all you have to do is become one of our awesome pledge hammers over on Patreon and leave a comment in our community section, and we'll collect them all and answer them. This one comes from Daniel Partridge. My dad has just started to understand my love of wrestling and has always watched WWE.
If I have it on.
Sorry, it's the punctuation that sometimes gets me. Earlier this year, I convinced him to watch Wrestle Kingdom for the Jericho Okada match. I think he meant a Mega match. But he started to get hooked when we went to a WWE live show in Cardiff, and now my dad wants to go to his first indie show, but I'm not sure which one to take him to get him fully involved in the company. I think we've actually answered this question before. I think we just said whichever's local to your...
Okay.
I think he might have sent it in as a email question on the podcast.
Well, I would say that if it's still running, Mark Andrews has a cool promotion in Wales where they have very funny names for their shows. And they run a really cool building with loads of spray painted stuff on the sides, but a lot of brickwork. So them, I guess, if NXT UK hasn't already crushed it.
Owen Morgan asks, "Hi guys, so glad to see you enjoying SmackDown. We needed a decent show for morale. Question for you, if WWE contacted you tomorrow and offered you a job as a creative writer, would you take it? And what story would you write first?" Well, I'll answer that, no. Absolutely 100% not. It just sounds like, when you hear the stories from like writers who have left the company, it just sounds like an awful position to hold in that company.
I think... I think it's like heroin, where you're like, it's obviously gonna, like doesn't seem like a good idea. Maybe it's nothing like heroin. What I was trying to get across.
If Trainspotting has taught me anything, heroin is not a good idea.
Enough.
It's a proper.
I've never seen the second half of that movie. I think all of us as wrestling fans, especially people who watch this channel and us, we like to pick apart the stories, and it's our dream, really. It would be our dream to be able to have full creative control over wrestlers, particularly wrestlers that we already know the characters of, and some of the best wrestlers in the world, like AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan. All these things and storylines you can write with weekly TV and pay-per-views paying them off in this structure. I think we'd be lying if we didn't say deep down, I wish I could. But the problem is when you kind of think, well, I'll be the one. I'll be the one who can change Vince McMahon's mind, and they'll go, you know what, kid? You're in control of the company now. And he puts you in charge of everything. I think there's a little bit, maybe it's more like the cinnamon challenge, where I'm still like, I could probably do that. Even though it looks impossible.
It's very difficult to do.
You've done it, yeah.
I have done it. It's very difficult
But
to
I
do.
haven't done it, so I'm kind of like, I reckon I could.
I think that video,
that out.
I think the guy that I did that with, because we don't speak anymore, I think he deleted that video. Because after we mentioned it on a WrestleRamble, a load of people found it and then started leaving loads of comments about support WrestleTalk, which I'd imagine flooded his inbox, so he just deleted the video.
Oh, that's no fair. But I would say, like, it wouldn't work. As much as I would love to have what my vision of that perfect job is, although I would be working for someone other than myself, which I'm not into anymore. It just doesn't work because you're working in what is quite clearly still a toxic working environment with a madman who rewrites everything 4 hours before the show anyway.
Well, that's what I'm like. The way that Vince Russo used to explain it when he was like writing the show back in the 90s is that you would spend an entire week writing a show, then you would present it to Vince McMahon, and he would essentially just throw everything out, and you have to just start again. So it's almost like, well, what's the point in me doing the work here? And that's what happens. Like, you go from Raw, you then spend the next week writing the next episode of Raw, and then Vince McMahon just rewrites the show 3 hours before the show goes on air. So you've spent all that time away from your family for no reason.
No,
absolutely not. Noah Enigma writes, thank you for your great work week after week. You're welcome. You always deliver your news in a very entertaining way. Sadly, not so entertaining is the product known as World Wrestling Entertainment, he puts in quotes. Speaking of a bad product, you guys have always said from time to time around 2006 to 2010 was the worst years of the modern era in WWE, but to be honest with you, I think that time gave us some really nice feuds and moments, like HBK's feuds with Jericho and The Undertaker, Orton versus the McMahons, Undertaker versus Edge, the rise and fall of Jeff Hardy with feuds and matches against Orton, Triple H, Edge, or CM Punk. What are your favourite moments, feuds, matches from that era, and was it really the worst time of the modern era? Greetings from Switzerland, Noah. I actually had someone tweet me about this literally yesterday as well, saying like, why do you hate 2006 so much? And the only answer I ever really give is that it's the one time that, aside from when I just completely stopped wrestling in watching wrestling in 2002, it's the one time where I was like, I'm done. I cannot watch this anymore. This is genuinely insulting, and I'm just not going to watch it anymore.
Well, I was done with WWE. I was watching Impact or TNA.
Exactly. I jumped over to TNA
for
hardcore.
This time, and I started watching the Indies and Ring of Honor near the later part of that decade. But yeah, I think you had, of course, it was 5 years of a company. By accident, they are going to put on good things. Like those things you mentioned there. For some reason, I think it's because I was around a friend's house watching it, and we were both it was so cool. Edge taking out, was it Kofi Kingston, and the Elimination Chamber match.
Yeah.
I love that. But what you are omitting here is all of that always played second fiddle to John Cena.
Or DX.
As much as we love him now, and we do, he was the worst. He was terrible. And all those positive moments you said there transpired into nothing. I guess the only unequivocal successes are HBK versus The Undertaker twice. I didn't even like the Orton versus the McMahon
I really didn't like that stuff.
But Jeff Hardy's the Jeff Hardy CM Punk feud was very good.
But it was
wasn't
again
that closer to 20. I guess that was 09.
And again, it was like really like second fiddle to anything else within the company. And yeah, I mean, there was just nothing really in that period that I liked. Because the person who tweeted me yesterday was just like, oh, I guess the Spirit Squad were back, but DX were great. And I was like, oh, DX were the absolute
they weren't.
I actually hated DX more than I disliked John Cena. DX just made me just want to just turn off the TV, which is why I've started watching Impact so much. Sawyer asks, I have to say, I'm really not into the new Daniel Bryan character. Absolutely love his look and overall acting and presentation, because obviously Daniel Bryan is good.
Fickle.
But the content is so lame. I feel like he's a vegan is something I would hear pitched in crap gimmicks. It's a good thing that Bryan can sell ice to an Eskimo, or these promos would have been total trash. His bearing of the what chant ruled, but removing the yes plates from his belt was great attention to detail and a wicked visual, but the difference is these are things that are innovative, fresh and intriguing, not lazy 90s gimmicks based on stereotypes. What am I missing?
I think you put it right there with crap gimmicks. If you write this down on paper, there's an environmentalist who says all these heel actions are nothing in the grander scheme of like people destroying the planet, which I actually think's a very interesting motivation for a character like a delusional heel. But on paper, yeah, it's not main event, biggest heel in the company stuff.
It's CJ Parker in NXT.
Exactly, but it all I mean, he turned into a very good performer
when he stopped doing that gimmick, though.
Yeah, as
Juice Robinson.
Juice Robinson in New Japan. But this is coming from a very real place with Daniel Bryan, and I always think like Mankind. Mankind is just like you see that on paper, and you're like, this is stupid. This is a stupid idea. But Mick Foley makes it work, and it's incredible. He's like this unstoppable, weird, pain-loving monster guy, but not the same kind of monster as an Undertaker Kane thing. More in, I guess, like a Leatherface way. But he, I think Daniel Bryan's knocking it out the park. A lot of the gimmick does depend on who's performing it.
Yeah.
And Bryan, like you said, can sell ice to an Eskimo.
They always said in like the 90s, the best gimmicks were like Austin, The Rock, it was Mankind, people like this. They always said, it's their personalities dialed up to 11. And that's more or less what you've got here. It's just that Daniel Bryan has taken an element of his personality, has seen the militant side of that and sort of how it can be sort of damaging to the overall message of veganism, caring about the planet, and being like, that's something I can really tap into and make that. And it comes back to what we said on the SmackDown review of just like it could be this year's Straight Edge Society, which was a gimmick I absolutely adored. And finally, from Chris Jenkins, the man who was doing as Hammer.
Leroy Jenkins.
The man who mistook us for not saying his name in the shout-outs and threatened to send our hammers to someone else.
It's a very volatile man, Jenkins.
He did send an email
touch?
to clarify that they are safe and sound. We should be getting them in a couple of weeks, in fact.
That's exciting.
It is exciting. So he asked, hey, Luke, Ollie, and Laurie.
Are you going to read out all his emails until then? Just that once we've got your hammers, Jenkins.
Hey, Luke, Ollie, and Laurie, here's a question for you. Would you rather see gimmick pay-per-views like Hell in a Cell, TLC, Money in the Bank, etc., stay the way they are, have them evolve for the most part, see improved versions of these gimmick pay-per-views, or is it time to create completely different, original, and fresh pay-per-views instead?
So I suppose you're asking...
do you want to see them slightly changed, modified, or scrapped? Well, actually, I don't think scrapped altogether. Just... create different ones.
Okay, so the difference between these is Money in the Bank is like the Royal Rumble now in my head.
Yes.
It's a point in the year that means something.
Yes.
So another thing would be like King of the Ring. I wish Survivor Series meant something, that concept. So those are different because those are like parts in your story that you put in first.
Yes.
That makes total sense to pre-announce that stuff a year in advance. Because it's like the G1. You're always going to have that thing that drives your stories forward. The problem with the other ones, Hell in a Cell, TLC, those are match stipulations that should really come from the characters and their storylines. So it used to be the way, I don't know if anyone remembers this, that you'll have two people feuding and you'll be like, oh man, they've done like 4 matches now. They're going to have to do something big. And then someone would announce, in Hell in a Cell. And you'll go, oh my God, that's going to be amazing. Or TLC. A last man stand, a fatal 4-way. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But now it's like, it's going to be a Hell in a Cell match next because next month is Hell in a Cell. And they're going to have it regardless of whether their feud needs it or not.
Well, that's it. And then you kind of sort of have to fudge a feud to make it work the gimmick. It's why I was really disappointed when NXT decided they're going to do War Games every year. because now that means in October we're just going to have to fudge storylines to create the necessity to have war games, as opposed to when they did it first and you were like, well, we need to have war games now because we need to settle this score. Whereas this year it was just like, oh, we need to get someone to face the Undisputed Era. Well, what if we get these 4 lads together and then we can have the match?
Although, if war games created something, like the next #1 contender for something.
But you still need to fudge a storyline of 4-on-4 to be able to create war games, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a difficult gimmick, but they used to do that in WCW. That's how War Games was every year as part of.
But War Games wasn't every year. War Games was when it needed to be.
No, War Games was roughly the same pay-per-view every year. What pay-per-view was it? It wasn't called War Games. It was called Googling on air.
I always thought War Games was just done sort of throughout.
No, I'm pretty sure.
They used to do it like Fall Brawl and things like that.
Match history. July, August, November. Okay, those are the 80s though. Yeah. So let's get to the 90s.
Yeah, and then August.
July,
May,
August, May,
September.
Okay, so Full Brawl, it was consistent from 93. Yeah, so it was Full Brawl in September every year from 93 to 98.
Okay, well there you go.
But before then, it was when it was needed. So there's still, I still get your argument.
Yeah, but to Bruce Pritchard, that company died.
That's what killed it.
Exactly.
We finally figured it out.
It wasn't the finger poke of doom. It was just doing war games every year.
You don't need a whole book on an Alvarez. Just the Wikipedia page
of war games specifically. For me, I would rather Hell in a Cell and TLC matches be saved for when a feud needs it, as opposed to just doing it because the pay-per-view says so.
What other ones are there?
Well, I think those are the only 2 gimmick ones they have now. They went through a period where it literally was like every pay-per-view was a gimmick, like it was Fatal 4-Way or...
That actually happened. Actually happened. And it's because TNA had such success with Lockdown.
Yeah.
So thanks, TNA.
But Lockdown, it didn't work when they did it in Lockdown either, because there were some matches where you're like, well, this doesn't need to be a cage match. So then they had to what if we did a cage match, but with another gimmick on it as well? And it would be like, well, it's a blindfold match in a cage match. Or it would be, it's a cage match, but it's an electrified cage match, which will go down as one of the worst matches in TNA history.
Well, on that positive note, that's all we've got time for. Remember, check out Fight Forever if you're in Bristol or Liverpool.
Yes.
With the links in the video description below, you can still go and see those shows tonight or tomorrow. And beer52.com/WrestleTalk, UK viewers only, to get your free case of delicious craft beer. I've been Ollie Davis. This has been Luke Owen. Click the videos that have just appeared to catch up with the latest WrestleTalk stuff. And that was Rambling.